Ukraine claims the missile hit Russia's oldest naval ship. Ukraine is losing in the UAV war with Russia. EU foreign ministers meet to discuss air defense for Ukraine and sanctions against Iran. Ukraine claimed to have hit Russia's oldest naval ship in Crimea. On April 21, the Ukrainian military announced that it had attacked and damaged the rescue ship Kommuna, a ship that has served in the Russian Navy for more than 100 years, in Sevastopol, where the Black Sea Fleet of Russia is headquartered. Russia is in the Crimea Peninsula, according to Reuters news agency. Ukrainian Navy spokesman Dmytro Pletenchuk said the Kommuna ship was attacked in Sevastopol Bay on the morning of April 21, and it is clear that the ship is no longer in a state of readiness to perform its duties. A post on the Telegram channel of the Armed Forces of Ukraine said the ship is one of the oldest serving in the Russian Navy. The Kyiv Independent newspaper wrote, Kommuna was launched in 1915 and is the oldest ship still in service in the Russian Navy. This ship was mobilized to serve the rescue operation when Ukrainian forces sank the Russian flagship Moskva in April 2022. Mr. Zelensky, Ukraine has a chance to win. In an interview on NBC News on April 21, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky thanked U.S. political leaders for approving a new aid package for Ukraine over the weekend, saying that the new aid package will giving Ukraine a chance to win when facing Russia. Ukraine lost in the drone battle with Russia. Drones used to be an effective weapon for Ukraine, however, the lack of coordination when deploying Kyiv's weapons and Russia's increasingly advanced jamming system are causing Ukraine to lose ground. Ukrainian soldiers operating drones cursed and removed their control glasses. The video transmitted by the drone gradually fades before the screen goes completely black. Russian forces jammed control signals and disabled a Ukrainian drone outside the city of Kremenaya, Donetsk province. Everything went smoothly on some days, but other days the equipment failed. Drones are very fragile and the enemy constantly jammed, said a Ukrainian soldier nicknamed DJ. Ukrainian forces have for many months taken advantage of this with drones carrying explosives that act as homemade missiles. This weapon is considered to be an effective replacement for artillery shells that Ukraine is running out of. However, Ukrainian units are facing many bad days as electronic warfare systems become one of the Russian army's most formidable weapons, after years of honing their capabilities. Electronic warfare is still the invisible hand affecting the entire Russia-Ukraine conflict. Like the disadvantage in numbers and ammunition supply, Ukraine is at a disadvantage against Russia in the field of electronic warfare. Russia possesses many jamming devices capable of disabling Ukraine's signals by broadcasting at the same frequency with higher power. Ukrainian soldiers, commanders, and experts say Russia's jamming capabilities are putting a strain on the country's limited drone supply, potentially forcing it to give up an important weapon. Meanwhile, Russia is producing domestic drones in larger quantities than Ukraine. The Ukrainian military describes drone operations and electronic warfare operations as cat and mouse. When one side changes technology, such as using a different control frequency or a new jamming system, the other side will catch up in a few weeks. Months. This is a non-stop race, said Bobby, a Ukrainian sergeant in a drone platoon. We are improving technology to cope with new realities on the battlefield. After a while, the Russian side will come up with something to better defend against our attack. Drones with small size and cheap price have become part of the conflict between Ukrainian government forces and pro-Russian separatists in the Donbas region since 2014. After the outbreak of hostilities between Russia and Ukraine, the warring parties widely used them. Spread drones on the battlefield. Ukraine last year prevailed in the drone race by deploying small flying vehicles capable of transmitting first-person view, FPV, images in large numbers. This type of drone often carries explosives and can take down targets that are much more valuable than them. FPV plays an important role for us. This toy-like vehicle is basically a flying artillery shell, helping to compensate for the lack of conventional artillery shells, Dyadya, a drone operator in the brigade. Ukraine's 63rd Mechanized Infantry Division, said. We can hit targets at a distance similar to mortars, but much more accurately. The power of artillery comes from using high explosives and shrapnel to cover large areas on the battlefield, causing casualties to enemy soldiers, destroying vehicles, and disrupting combat operations. One or two drones cannot deliver the same effect. However, when Ukraine ran out of artillery shells last fall, they had to switch to using FPV as guided ammunition. This weapon is effective in preventing attacks and delivering lightning strikes to Russian trenches and combat vehicles. Thanks to that, Ukraine saved artillery shells to hold off Russian forces on the battlefield, but the Russian military is increasingly improving its jamming capabilities and taking advantage of bad weather such as fog or rain to advance, when drones have difficulty flying. Both sides quickly grasped the opponent's core drone operational improvements and tactics. Samuel Bendet, a drone expert at the US-based Center for Naval Analysis, CAN, said. Currently, both sides are perfecting this technology very quickly. During the first two sorties, the DJ screen showed an empty land as the drone carrying more than 1 kilogram of explosives flew at a speed of nearly 100 kilometers per hour to the place where the Russian vehicle was attacked. However, the signal was quickly interrupted because of jamming by Russian forces. The third reached the Russian trenches and exploded above the canopy, despite being jammed from several dozen meters away. Ukraine's military relies on outside civilian groups to provide drones and deploy electronic warfare. Each drone unit acts as an experimental team specializing in testing new technology, new weapons, and new combat missions. Russia approaches this field with much stricter supervision from the military. This makes the activities of Russian drone units more predictable, their tactics change less, and their types are less diverse. However, Russia's strict command system in electronic warfare and drones helps them reduce the risk of jamming their own friendly drones, by having units coordinate with each other to choose low-equipment flight paths for drones. Most affected by interference. On the Ukrainian side, we don't have the same thing, a Ukrainian soldier admitted. The lack of a command structure with the ability to coordinate drone units often confuses Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines. Ukrainian soldiers operating drones sometimes lose connection to their vehicles and have to look through cameras on other drones. FPV drones based on civilian models often share the same frequency. Ukrainian drone units often need soldiers with programming ability to change the vehicle's control frequency. European Union (EU) foreign ministers will meet in Luxembourg today, April 22, to discuss strengthening Ukraine's air defense system and expanding sanctions on Iran. Although EU ministers will also discuss the war in Sudan, much of their focus will be on the conflicts raging at the bloc's eastern and southern gateways, in Ukraine and the Middle East. In the context of Russia increasing airstrikes on energy infrastructure and other targets in neighboring countries, EU governments are facing pressure to provide more air defense systems such as Patriot to Ukraine. So far, Germany is the only EU member to announce that it will send additional Patriot systems according to Kiev's latest request. According to Reuters, EU foreign ministers and the bloc's defense ministers will meet with their Ukrainian counterparts on April 22 before moving on to discuss the crisis in the Middle East, which started with the Israeli conflict. Hamas, from October 7, 2023. They are expected to seek to agree on the next level of sanctions against Iran, following Tehran's missile and drone attack on Israeli territory in the early morning of April 14. The EU has implemented many sanctions against Iran, both for its alleged proliferation of weapons of mass destruction and for providing UAVs to Russia, despite Tehran's denials. Coalition leaders last week agreed to impose new sanctions against Iran. Many EU countries have called for expanding sanctions against the Muslim nation both for its missile program and for transferring weapons to proxy forces in the Middle East. According to diplomats, some EU countries are also pushing for the alliance to include Iran's powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps on the list of terrorist organizations. However, they have yet to find a legal basis for such a step, and it is unlikely that all EU members would support such a move.